Hello and welcome to another turntable update. Well, in the previous update I showed my new DIY interconnects that I made 3 meters long to connect this unit with this, and there they are at the back there. Now normally this sits 3 meters away from this, which is why the cables needed to be 3 meters in length, and everything was good. It obviously improved the sound quality compared with the cable that I was using. Now the output from the Phono preamplifier went 3 meters length into an auxiliary input on my amplifier here, remembering not to plug it into the Phono stage because it's already been amplified here. The reason this Phono stage isn't being used is simply because this sits too far away from the turntable for it to be practical. And everything was good, but the winter has come and I've now swapped my amplifiers over. And being the winter, the Musical Fidelity amplification has been replaced with the MWA Passive Pre-Amp, which you see here, the P90, and my valve monoblocks. Now the problem here is that this amplifier here is passive. It's not an amplifier really at all. The inputs go in, and around the other side you have the controls. You have source selection here, and you have volume control. You've got left and right separate volume control for the amplifier, but this does not plug into the electricity. It's not powered. It's literally just connectors and the volume control and the switch and the sockets, and that's it. It then goes off to the power amplifiers. And the problem is, this is already 3 meters long. It then plugs into here. The wire goes through here to the various switches at the front, comes out the back to the outputs here, and then goes off another 1.5 meters to my power amps. Means that the signal from this Phono preamplifier is going a hell of a long way through various connectors and switches, etc., before it eventually gets to the amplifier. And by the time it reaches it, the sound from here has been sucked out. It's rather thin and weak and weedy and lifeless. It wasn't a problem when I was using the Musical Fidelity preamplifier, which is an active amplifier. The 3 meters was an acceptable distance. It worked fairly well. It would have been better if it was shorter, but 3 meters was okay. Here it is not okay. It's hindering the performance of my turntable rig, something chronic. The other devices that I plug into here, CD player, Blu-ray player, DAC, etc., have a maximum lead length of 1 meter. Most of them are only 0.5 meter. It's not a problem. With this one, it's a serious problem. It really is making the turntable sound poor. So what to do? Enter the Musical Fidelity X10-D, the original component that Musical Fidelity made in this rather cool cylindrical casework. Now you might be thinking, hang on a second, weren't you just showing that a minute ago? And the answer is no, it just happens to be in the same casework. It is in exactly the same casework as my Phono preamplifier. As you can see, that says X-LPS, that says X10-D. Now you might be thinking, well okay, what the heck is that for? And it's sort of similar to the Phono preamplifier. The Phono preamplifier, as anybody who's into turntable knows, amplifies the very weak signal from the turntable, from the stylus cartridge unit on the turntable, and amplifies it to a line level signal to go into your amplifier. It is a special amplifier for a turntable, a Phono preamplifier. This is also a preamplifier. It's what's known as a line level preamplifier. This amplifies a line level signal that goes into it, and out the other side comes a line level signal. Yes, you heard that right. The signal that goes in is exactly the same as the signal that comes out. It's an amplifier that doesn't actually amplify anything. The volume is the same on the input as on the output. I think technically this unit does actually give an increase of about 1 decibel. Technically you couldn't call it an amplifier if it didn't actually amplify the signal. It gives a little boost, but not really so that you'd notice. Sort of subliminal type boost. Now you might be thinking, this product makes a lot of sense. I know what that does. This product sounds like one of the most stupid things ever in the history of hi-fi components. Why on earth would you want a device that amplifies something without actually making it any louder. An amplifier that doesn't amplify. Doesn't really make a lot of sense. Now, what this does is boost the signal. It boosts the signal without making it any louder. I mean, if you turn around and look at the back, you have input, RCA input, output. You've got the power socket there for the 12 volt AC. As with all the exponent units made by Musical Fidelity, it uses 12 volts AC rather than DC. And you put the, so you connect the interconnects here, inputs and outputs there. That's it. That's all it does. It sits in line. So here we have the products wired up. I had to move their positions around because that's the way they're actually wired round when they're using them. And they use a very short pair of interconnects on here. So here you have the Phono preamplifier, which is sitting near the turntable. The turntable plugs into that. Then you've got the 3 metre lead, remembering these two units are about 3 metres apart, which connects the two together. Then I made another DIY lead, which is exactly the same as these. It's Kimber Tambra cable with these nice locking plugs. And that plugs, as short as possible, plugs into the passive preamplifier. And the input's then selectable via the front as normal. Now what this is doing is basically boosting the signal from here, so that the signal entering here is very short and the signal entering here is very strong. So the output then goes to the amps, and the signal coming from this, and ultimately from this, which is ultimately from the turntable, is then a very strong, powerful signal. As I say, it's an amplifier which boosts the signal without making it any louder. It just gives it an awful lot more dynamics, an awful lot more grunt, a lot more power. And in this particular case, it is a very useful product to use. Other companies make similar products as well. Now, from a technical standpoint, what is going on is it has a very high impedance input. I think it's something like half a mega ohm input, and it has a very low impedance output. This thing can drive amplifiers very, very, very well, but it puts a very, very light load on the source component. It's easy for this to drive the inputs on here. Absolute doddle, even with long cables, not a problem. This then gives a huge amount of grunt power to actually power the amplifier. And in this situation, it works very well. It's one of those funny little esoteric hi-fi components that most people probably don't know about. But if you need it, it does an absolutely splendid job. But in most situations, of course, you don't need it. So, in the context of my vinyl rig, when it has been used with the passive preamplifier, it puts the life and soul back into the music. It does a brilliant job of bringing the vinyl replay back up to speed. Without that in place, the vinyl replay all winter long would be a pretty washed out affair, which is a bit of a shame because I listen to more music in the winter than I do in the summer, especially on vinyl. And it'd be a bit of a disappointment if the vinyl was always playing second fiddle to the other formats, simply because it's so far away from the hi-fi. And this thing is an absolute godsend. Now, the X10-D also has another feature. Well, it's just part of its design, but another thing which makes it a very useful product. You see, this little Linestage preamplifier uses valves, or as they call them in America, tubes. It is a tube amp, or as it's sometimes known as a tube buffer stage. And that gives it a distinctive sound. Valves have a distinctive sound. They are very full, warm, and very energetic sounding. A lot of people who don't like valves, or tend to be just technically minded, tend to think that people only like valves because they have a certain tone, or they're delivering pleasant harmonics. And to some extent that's probably true. But if you want those, you cannot get them through just manipulating sound. I've tried with various things, it doesn't work. The energy they put into their sound cannot be got through other means. And a lot of what makes valves sound great is that energy it puts it in. There's just something pleasant about the way it does it. Now, don't for 1 minute think that this is some rose-tinted thing that just warms the sound up. This device has, I think it's measured at 0.01% distortion between 10 Hz and 100 kHz. It also has a flat frequency response between 10 Hz and 100 kHz. This is not EQing the sound or altering the sound in any way. It's a very neutral sounding device, very well designed sounding device. But it does give the product that's put into it, plugged through it, that sort of boost in valve sound. Now, there are other uses for this device which I'll show in future videos. It was originally designed to be used with CD players back in the 90s. A lot of CD players sounded incredibly thin and tinny, simply because the analog portion of the player was poor. You put this between the CD player and your amplifier and it warms the sound up. A lot of people have asked me, when I've said in previous videos, oh, my CD sounds warmer than my vinyl replay, and people are a bit surprised. And some people have asked, how can I make my CD player sound warm? Well, one of the easiest ways of doing it is you use one of these. You just plug the CD player into that and you plug that into your amplifier. Job done. Makes a hell of a difference to the sound on cheap CD players. Having said that, it's a complete waste of time if you've got an expensive CD player that's got a good high quality analog output stage. It's just pointless. But it's one of those products that, if it can be a benefit to you, it really is a godsend. But it only fulfills certain roles, certain needs. So this is the Musical Fidelity X10-D. Very useful product if there is a use for it in your hi-fi system. Now, it was originally made in '96. It was the very first product that Musical Fidelity made using this casework, and people in the factory nicknamed it the Piglet. So the subsequent products tend to be called little piglets as well. Now, it comes with an external power supply, which plugs in the back, but it's an AC power supply, not a DC, which means there's a transformer in here. The electronics in here convert it from AC to DC. And because this uses tubes, its quality is very dependent on the quality of the power supply. It is a very, very good idea to upgrade this unit. So let's accessorize. Now, one of the ways you can easily upgrade hi-fi equipment is to replace the power supply. Now, if it's an external unit like this, it's very, very easy to swap it for a high quality device. Now, anybody who's seen my previous videos will know that I have a power supply in a matching casework. And there it is, the Musical Fidelity XPSU. Now, this can power up to 4 exponent devices, so it could power my Phono preamplifier and this at the same time without any problems. But the Phono preamplifier and the power supply sit in 3 meters away from this, and that is a bit of a problem. So these are not going to be part of the way the X10-D is used. So I need another power supply. As luck would have it, I have just such the thing. And there it is. It's not quite as flashy looking as the other power supply, but it is actually significantly bigger. The transformer in here is a much larger unit than the one in the Musical Fidelity device, and this can power up to 6 Musical Fidelity devices, and it's called Russ Andrews SixPack. Now, I bought this second hand on eBay quite a few years back, about £45, something like that. I think it was about 200 when it was new. But as ever, you want to save money on your hi-fi, know what you're looking for, and pick it up second hand. I've also fitted little cone feet to the bottom to help remove any unwanted vibrations from the unit before the vibrations end up going down the cables into the other equipment. That will of course be connected. In this case, of course, the things are actually on the front. But it will be connected into the back using a Kimber cable, also sold by Russ Andrews. Unlike the other Musical Fidelity unit, this isn't going to be sitting on my equipment rack, it will be sitting behind it. It's not the most attractive looking device. And it will be plugged into my main filtration unit, the balanced power supply that I use my main equipment, with a Russ Andrews specialist mains lead. Now, it's pretty much business as usual for the way I connect my equipment up. And if you've seen my previous video with my Musical Fidelity X-LPS Phono stage, it's very similar modifications that I did to that. Now, I had all these parts lying around, didn't buy any of them. I've already got them, and I've had this device for years. Previously it's been used with CD players, or when I use very long cable runs with components. But, say, the difference that this power supply, which I say is a very big, beefy, high quality transformer in there, makes to this unit, with extra bonus from having a good quality cable there to keep the noise down, and using the specialist mains lead, which is plugged into my mains filtration, which is on my special hi-fi ring main, etc. The difference is absolutely huge. It's night and day difference. The difference this power supply brings to this is much bigger than the other power supply brings to my Phono stage. because this thing uses valves, it really does benefit from having that much more powerful power supply. In fact, I would say to anybody who's using Musical Fidelity Exponents products that have valves built into them, which is the X10-D, both the headphone amps and the preamplifier, always use aftermarket high quality power supplies. They sound massively superior to the basic wall-wart unit that it actually comes with when you buy it. So there we have it, the Musical Fidelity X10-D Linestage preamplifier, or as some would say, a tube buffer stage, sitting in my vinyl rig and performing a very, very useful, I'd actually go as far as to say necessary role of boosting the signal because of using the long cables and the passive preamplifier. It's an unusual, esoteric piece of hi-fi that fulfills a role brilliantly if you need that role fulfilled. It's not something that everybody's going to find it useful, but if you're using very long cable runs, it's a godsend. If you've got a very thin sounding or cold sounding CD player that you want boosted to sound much warmer, this thing's a godsend. And certainly in the context of my vinyl rig, while I'm running it in the winter, it has added an enormous amount of body, energy and warmth to the sound, and is a very beneficial, worthwhile, and I'd say, it goes as far as to say, necessary addition to the system. And that's it for this turntable update. Thanks for watching.